Everybody, welcome back. It's Monday Night Live. We're going to have a conversation today with McKenna Krager, my son, who's a regular, and we're going to talk to Rafael Rosado. So we'll bring them in. Rafael's from our Apex community over on School, and he and I were having coffee this morning. We were talking real estate. He was talking about some deals he had. He had some questions, and I thought, you know what? We should bring you on the Monday Night Live. We'll talk to you for 15 minutes, start off with a bang, and then hopefully, guys, the way that this works is that you guys put a bunch of questions in the chat. The more questions you ask, better this goes for everybody. So we invite any kind of question you've got about real estate, whether it's Puerto Rico real estate or Orlando, Florida real estate, or really just real estate investment in general. If you want to jumpstart this, join us over on School. We've got a community of like-minded real estate investors and entrepreneurs who are just waiting for you to network with them and to learn with them and to do deals with them. If you're not sure what a deal is and you're worried about how to get started and you're looking for a community that you can come alongside and jumpstart your real estate investing career, we've got the community for you over on School. Click the link in the description. Hey, McKenna.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
My name is Rafael. I'm a Section 8 real estate investor. Moved to Puerto Rico about 2 years ago, and I'm here looking to invest. Had a couple questions. Since I've been here in Puerto Rico, I've been looking to see how I can get financing, how we can go forward with, do I have to take financing from the States and bring it here to Puerto Rico? Any answers for that?
Yeah, so we had all the same challenges, right? When I came 6.5 years ago, we didn't know how we would finance property, and so we ended up doing it through cash and through partnerships. And I sold some property back in the States as well, and then moved the money to the island, and that has been very effective for us. We're going to do some more of that right now, like in real time. I think things have just gotten like very expensive. And what I look at is, would I rather be a seller of something or be a buyer of something? And right now in Orlando, Florida, most of the time I'd rather be the seller. So I'm going to sell some things in Florida and then move the money to Puerto Rico, where most of the time I'd rather be the buyer than the seller. So maybe that could be something that you would think about doing as well, or borrowing against some properties that you have in New York and then bringing the money over here to buy some properties on the island. Could be a good idea.
What would you do to generalize that a little bit? You don't have any properties. You're trying to do your first or second deal in Puerto Rico. How would you go about financing that way?
I'd probably look to a community like we have on School, and I'd find some people that are wanting to do the same thing. And I say this every week, guys, it starts with a deal. So if you have a great deal and you have a community to go to where there are people that want to be in real estate deals, and you could bring a great deal to a community like we have in Apex, for instance, or even the Flip Flop Flipper School community, and post it there and try and find people to partner with you. I'm a big proponent of partnering with people. I believe real estate is a team sport, not just something you should do in isolation by yourself. What I see happen is people who, McKenna, don't know how to fund things. Instead of going and finding the deal or getting something under contract because they're afraid that they're not going to be able to fund it, and they're not a part of something where they can bring it to a group of people fairly easily, they pass on deal after deal. I was thinking earlier, I wonder how many times someone lets a great deal slip through their hands because they don't realize there's a whole world out there that would just love for them to bring that deal and present it to a group and then put a partnership together.
Yeah. I always like to say there's always an old person out there that has a lifetime of wealth and they want to deploy it and they want to give it to you, but you need to give them a good deal. I'm a big fan of the partnerships, the equity splits. But going back to you, Rafael, you said you had a few questions?
Yes. So I have one question that I do have is, how do you approach here in the island how to do, let's say, an owner financing or a subject to? Because with this property, I had a property in Guanabo, which a family member of mine, actually my mother-in-law, recommended the property to us, and the property was going through a bankruptcy, but the actual owner was interested in selling the property, and she was interested in doing a subject too.
Mm.
But I didn't know how to go forward with that on the island. I don't know if it's different from the state to island.
So the only piece of it that I would be a little bit cautious of is the bankruptcy. You told me earlier that it was in bankruptcy. I'm not clear on what that means. I know that when we talked, you said that it sounded like had done a loan modification. So her payment was like
Yes.
4,000 and she's now paying like 15 or $1,600 a month, and she
Yes.
owes $160,000 or something like that.
Yeah, she owed about 160,000. She wanted 200,000 for the property,
Yeah.
and the property, as we were talking, the property was possibly worth about 500,000. You know, it was
Yeah.
8 unit. I feel it needed about 100,000 into the property, maybe a little
Yeah.
more. But with prices being in Puerto Rico, I know the states, but I'm not too familiar with here in Puerto Rico. But I'm definitely willing to learn.
Well, renovation costs are about the same for us in Florida and in Puerto Rico. They're probably similar, maybe cheaper than they are in New York State. I don't know. I feel like things might be a little bit more expensive for you guys up in New York than they are for us in Florida or for us here in Puerto Rico. But you had I think this is like what I was just saying. This seems like a really good deal, and you showed me pictures of it. It's in a very good area near San Patricio. If I was trying to negotiate that, I would want to give the lady 40 grand and take
Mhm.
over her payment with the bank and just have her deed it to me. So now I don't know how that would work with the bankruptcy, and you'd have to talk to an attorney about that. But if for some reason you needed to leave it in her name for a period of time, you could set up a lease option contract with her where you gave her the 40 grand, you start making the payment to the bank, and you leave it effectively in her name unless and until you get it out of bankruptcy or until you find a new buyer or refinance. But that would have been a really good deal for someone to partner with you on. For instance, if you brought it to our group and you said, "Hey, I can buy it for 200. We need 40,000 to pay the lady, and we need another 100 grand to renovate it. So it needs 150,000. But at the end of the day, you're going to have 300 in it, and it's worth $500,000. Plus, it should cash flow." That's a heck of a deal. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a heck
Definitely
of a
something
deal.
people would partner with you on. So
And it was a good looking house too. I mean, I don't know if you have pictures handy or if we'd be able to pull them up or not. But how could he send us pictures?
I can.
Can you still get that deal, do you think? I mean, I know you said maybe the son solved the problem. Is that
I'm
something
definitely.
that you think
We're
you could still
definitely
get?
looking. We're definitely looking into it because we just recontacted them today after our meeting.
Yeah.
She's friends with the family. She's 78. She doesn't want to deal with the property. And as she mentioned to us that her son and her daughter really didn't want the property. They live in, I believe they live in Florida,
mm,
and they're not real estate investors. They're not into that. So there's a possibility. There's definitely a possibility. We just have to, do a little chit chat and see what's
Well,
going on.
that's a couple things that I mean, so it sounds like they've solved the problem. Maybe the bankruptcy will go away fairly soon. And if you can take over that mortgage, that's a great deal. I mean, that's definitely something. What I think is nice about like the Apex community, where we've got a community of real estate investors who want to do deals together. I'm certain that if you brought that to the table and have it on a silver platter that said, "Hey guys, I'd like to partnership with either Robbie, McKenna, Don, or anyone else in the community," and our desire is to do deals together, right? Like we want to figure out how to do that inside of that community. So I
on that
think
I
that would
definitely would
work.
love to partner. I definitely
Yeah.
would love to partner with you guys and the people in the community. That's for
Awesome.
sure.
Yeah,
Well,
and
if the numbers you're
that's what it's
saying are
there
true,
for.
that's pretty exciting. On that deal, is it possible? Is it already rented? Like, couldn't you buy it and have
One
renters in there immediately?
one unit is rented,
Okay.
and everything else is vacant, and she lives on the top floor. And and by the way, there's an elevator in the middle of the house, which is cool. It's not completed. So that was one thing that me and my wife were looking at it, and we were trying to figure out, like, okay, do we remove this? How do we go forward with this? I
Do you
never
complete the
experienced
elevator?
an
Is it a
elevator in the
two-story house
house.
or three-story?
It's a two-story. It's a
So you don't
two-story.
really need an elevator necessarily.
You really don't need it. You definitely don't
But
need
it
it.
is cool.
But it is cool. That's for sure. So, I got here some questions on my paper. So I was trying to mention, how do you comp some unknown properties in Puerto Rico in unfamiliar spots?
Yeah, Don's probably best to answer that, but he doesn't have a microphone. What we do, what I like to do is ask realtors in the neighborhood to run a CMA, a comparative market analysis. You can also use what's the app? The Red Atlas. Red Atlas is the app that we've been recommending to people to get data. So they've got recent sold comps there. It is a paid service. They're not sponsoring me, although I might have to hit them up for a sponsorship. Find It PR is another one that you can use. That one's free. And then there's something called Regrid that'll tell you what people paid for something. REGRID, Regrid.
Regrid.
And Regrid is like the crime. It tells you who owns it, what they paid for it, when they bought it. Doesn't really give you comps, but it does give you a lot of information. But Find It PR and Red Atlas will both kind of give you some comps. What we do in Puerto Rico, because data is so difficult, I've got a handful of realtors that I've partnered with over the years, and I call upon them to run a CMA, a comparative market analysis. And like I told you earlier, on something like the eightplex, buying it at 200, I would just back into the valuation through what the cash flow is. So I would take, what do I think the rents are going to be, and how much money am I going to be into it, and then figure out a cap rate and figure out if I think it's a good enough deal or not. I like those multifamily deals because then if I'm getting a good enough return on my money, I really don't care if it's ever sold, if something is ever sold for $1 million or not. And if I'm going to be all in for $300,000 and I can make a 25% return, then hell, it's a great deal. You don't have to
matter.
You don't have to go any further than that, you know?
Definite. It's like earlier we were talking about, it's like I mentioned, I invested in Rochester, New York, and the properties there years ago, I was purchasing them for 15,000 and then renting them out for 900. So, and within a year, you're getting back your money that you invested into the property. But definitely interested in doing the same thing in Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Obviously, great deals.
So
and now what are those houses in Rochester worth? So you still own them 10 years later?
150, 180. They appreciated a lot. I don't dare to sell them because of capital gains tax.
Yep.
But they have increased dramatically. Rents are now 2,000, 1,500, 1,600, depending on the amount of units. So is that a situation
where maybe you could borrow against them at a low level, 50 cents on the dollar or something to get yourself a war chest to come and invest here?
Yeah, it's definitely an option. I was running into a little bit of an issue with the DSCR loans. And one of the issues that it was uncomfortable for me was that the property was giving me full cash flow, and then if I took this loan out, my pretty much my payments would have been 1,300. My house rents for 15, and I'm like, should I just sell this instead of holding this monthly payment for 30 years and just hope in the possibility of the rents continue to increase in the next 10 years, I guess?
Well, and I guess it depends on how much money you're borrowing out. Are you pulling all the equity out, or you?
It was about 100,000. About 100,000.
So you're still leaving yourself with some equity, and you'd have hopefully some cash flow, but you'd have the money to come here. I really think that's like a personal decision. Like, so you wouldn't have the capital gain problem if you borrowed the money, obviously, and then you'd have somebody else paying down your mortgage over the next 30 years. So that's nice. And you'd have some cash to do the business you've already done there before. You said you're a Section 8 landlord, and Section 8 works really well on the island.
Definite.
But you lose your cash flow, so you got to go. You got to get new business that's going to replace that, so you can continue to pay your bills.
Exactly. I was considering the 1031 exchange.
Sure.
You
can do the 1031 exchange from state to state, but you can't do it to Puerto Rico. Sorry,
you can't.
You cannot. No. You could sell and take your capital gain and invest it into a self-directed opportunity zone, because the island is 98% an opportunity zone or 96% an opportunity zone. A little tricky. I don't know. If I was worried about the capital gains, maybe I'd probably just borrow the money out. If you can borrow the money out and not pay a capital gain, that's not bad at all. So
Yeah, that might be a better bet. So with the questions here, I guess you answered it already. How do you remove the attachment to a property? And
the attachment.
Because I feel an attachment to the comfortability of the property producing an income, and I know sometimes that can hold you down from growth.
Yeah.
So that's something that I personally
maybe borrow on one or two. I mean, you have 3 or 4, so maybe only borrow on 1 or 2, just so you're super safe, and keep some cash flow, and then immediately invest in something that's going to cash flow here. So when we first came to the island, we had no cash flow, right? We started a brand new business in Puerto Rico. We had a business in Florida that cash flowed, that was paying for life, and that enabled us to be able to come here. And you're sort of doing the same thing. You're here now. You want to buy more real estate. So do you partner with people and leave what you've got back in the States just running on autopilot? That's one way to go. And then you give up a lot of equity here to do that. And that's what we did, by the way. We partnered with people to come in. We would find a great deal like you talked about earlier, and I would talk to investors, and they would come alongside of us. They'd put up the money, we'd do all the work, and we'd share the profit. So that's one way to go. The other way to go would be to borrow against what you've got and lose some cash flow, but bring the money, and then you maintain control of what you're buying here. And you could do a combination. You could do the last way, I guess, you could sell everything and move all of the money here. That one I didn't do. We're considering selling most of what we got in Florida now, just because it's gotten so expensive, and we've already been here for 6.5 years, and it's going well for us. So I will tell you this: the business you want to do here with the Section 8, it works really, really well. We've been there and done that, and we came kind of with the same kind of glasses that you have, right? Like we were successful with it in the States. Will it work in Puerto Rico? And we were able to get it off the ground and get it running, and you can as well.
Awesome. I appreciate the encouragement and the advice.